Lesson 2.1, Reducing, Multiplying, and Dividing Fractions. The first part of this lesson involves an activity, one in which you should do. Identify the following fractional amounts on the tape measure. So here are the answers to this activity so you can check your work. Okay, so just remember that for the first inch, you've got the tick marks dividing the first inch into 16 parts. So 3/16 would just be counting 1, 2, 3, the third one there. Okay. The next level of tick marks divides this into fourths. So you got 1/4 here, half, and 3/4 here. So there's our next one there, 3/4. Okay. And then you get 1 whole inch. Add another quarter, that gives you 5/4, so 5/4. Okay. And then every second tick mark represents an eighth. So 2 inches plus 1/8. And then 7/2 is the same thing as saying, if we do 7 divided by 2, it's just 3.5, so 3.5. So I have 3, and then another 1/2 inch. So these are all types of fractions that we're going to be working with. Okay, and some of them have specific names. So proper fractions are fractions such as 3/16 and 3/4. And these are fractions where we have the numerator being a smaller number or less than the denominator. The top number less than the bottom number. So 3 less than 16 and 3 less than 4. Now we can have fractions where the numerator is greater than the denominator, and these would be improper fractions, such as 7/2. So this is where the numerator is greater than the denominator. And then you can have mixed numbers, such as 2 and 1/8, right? So you have a whole part, which is the 2, plus the fraction part, which is the 1/8. Okay. Oftentimes we're going to need to do something called simplifying a fraction or reducing a fraction into its lowest terms. And so reducing a fraction is a simple process that involves dividing the numerator and the denominator of the fraction by a common factor. Common factor. This can help simplify the fraction and make it easier to work with. We like to work with fractions where we have the smallest possible numbers. So how do we reduce a fraction? Follow these steps. Step 1, find the greatest common factor of the numerator and the denominator. The greatest common factor is the largest number that can be divide both the numerator and denominator without leaving a remainder. So, and then step 2, divide the numerator and denominator by that greatest common factor, and that will result in your simplified fraction. So let's do an example. Consider the fraction 8/12. To reduce this fraction, we need to find the greatest common factor of 8 and 12. So you start out by writing the factors. So what are the factors of 8? Well, I can do 1 times 8. So 1 is a factor and 8 is a factor. And I can also do 2 times 4. So these are all factors of 8. What numbers can I multiply to get 8? Those are your factors. Same thing for 12. I have 1 times 12. I have 2 times 6. I have 3 times 4. So here are the factors of 12. So what are the factors in common? Well, we have 1, we have 2, and we have 4. What's the greatest one amongst those ones that are common? Well, 4 is the greatest one. So we can divide both the numerator and denominator by 4. So how does that look like? You take 8, here's your fraction, 8/12, divide the numerator by 4, divide the denominator by 4. what do you get? 2. 8 divided by 4 is 2, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. So 2 over 3. You get the reduced fraction of 2 over 3. So take a few moments, try the you try question. Pause the video and try. Okay, so the result you should get here is 5 over 7. Okay, another thing we're going to be doing with fractions is multiplying fractions. So how do you multiply fractions? So here's my example. 3 over 4 times 8 over 9. So one method we can do is simply multiply your numerators. 3 times 8, so 3 times 8 is 24. And multiply the denominators. 4 times 9, which is 36. So we have 24 over 36. Okay, but again, we may need to reduce the fraction into lowest terms. Simplify. So what's the greatest common factor between 24 and 36? Well, you can work that out separately. But here I'm just going to tell you the greatest common factor is 12. Okay, and how do I get 12? Work out the factors like we did in the previous example. So 24 over 36, if I divide the numerator and denominator by 12, we get 2 in the top and 3 in the bottom. And there's our reduced fraction. So always, always, always write your answer in simplest form. Here's another method that we can use to carry out this problem. So I can write out the multiplication of the numerators and the denominators. So 3 times 8 over 4 times 9. Okay, and what you can notice is that I can divide one numerator and one denominator by their common factor, 3, right? So if you notice here, 3 and 9, if I divide them by 3, their common factor, I get 1 and on the top and 3 on the bottom. Okay, so now I can write this as 1 times 8 over 4 times 3. And then I can notice 8 on the top and 4 on the bottom. Well, those divide, right? And so I divide 8 divided by 4, that's going to be 2, right? So if I divide by their common factor, what's their common factor? The common factor is 4, so if I divide by 4, on the top I get 2. Divide by 4 on the bottom I get 1. So the result is 1 times 2 over 1 times 3, which is 2 over 3. So we get the answer in reduced form or simplified form. So I want you to look at the you try questions and try these yourselves. Pause the video. Okay, hopefully you've had a chance to do these questions. Here are the answers. You got 20 over 120, and this is where you get the greatest common factor. You find that greatest common factor is 20, and then you reduce to 1/6. For 3 over 10 times 5 over 9, you can get multiply the numerators, you get 15. Multiply the denominators, 10 times 9 is 90. And so you can reduce this by finding the greatest common factor, and that greatest common factor is 15. And so 15 divided by 15 is 1 on the top, and 90 divided by 15 is 6 on the bottom. And so 1 over 6 is your answer. Okay, dividing fractions. How do we divide two fractions? One way we divide fractions is by changing the division to multiplication. In a very specific way, though. You can't just change the sign. There's a couple other things you have to do, okay? So you do this by multiplying the first fraction by the reciprocal of the second fraction. To find the reciprocal of a fraction, you just have to flip the numerator and the denominator. For example, the reciprocal of fraction 2 over 3 is 3 over 2, okay? It's a very simple algorithm called keep, change, flip. So from dividing, here my example, 7 over 10 divided by 4 over 9. What you do is you keep the first fraction, 7 over 10. Change the division sign into a multiplication sign, and then flip the second fraction to its reciprocal. 4 over 9 becomes 9 over 4. So you've turned a division problem into a multiplication problem by doing this. And then you can carry out the same steps as the previous section. That is, you multiply the numerators, 7 times 9, you get 63. And you multiply the denominators, 10 times 4, which is 40. Okay, and don't forget to simplify if possible. So you try this question, pause the video, have a try. Okay, so hopefully you've done it. So 3 over 7, change the sign, flip the second fraction, so 5 over 4 becomes 4 over 5, and then treat it like a multiplication problem. 3 times 4 is 12, 7 times 5 is 35. Converting a mixed number to an improper fraction. To convert a mixed number to an improper fraction, you can follow these steps. Step 1, multiply the whole number by the denominator of the fraction. So in my example, 3 3/5 is a mixed number. Step 1, multiply the whole number by the denominator of the fraction. So the whole number is 3. The denominator is 5. 3 times 5 is 15. Step 2, add the product from step 1 to the numerator of the fraction. So the numerator is this 3 over here. Add it with the 15. 15 plus 3 is 18. And then step 3, write the sum from step 2 over the original denominator. So 18 is the sum from step 2, divided by the original denominator, which is 5. 18 over 5. Now we have an improper fraction. No more whole number. No more mixed number. So when we're doing operations with mixed numbers, multiplying and dividing, we want to convert them into improper fractions first. So you try this one here on the right, 5 3/4, turn that into an improper fraction, pause the video. Okay, hopefully you had a chance to do it. Here again, following the steps, 5 times 4, whole number times the denominator, that's step 1. That gives you 20. Add that 20 to the numerator. 20 plus 3 is 23. And then step 3, write down that sum, 23, and over the original denominator, which is 4. So 23 over 4 is your answer. Okay, so multiplying mixed numbers, we can do this now. Okay, so if I'm asking you to multiply these two mixed numbers here, 2 4/5 times 3 1/4. Okay, convert to an improper fraction. That's your first step. Convert each one to an improper fraction. So 2 4/5 would be, well, you multiply 2 times 5, which is 10. So 2 times 5. You're going to add that to the numerator, okay, and then divide by the original denominator. I'm just putting all 3 steps into one. Okay, 2 times 5 is 10, plus 4 is 14 over 5. For the second mixed number, 3 1/4, you take the whole number apart, 3, multiply by the denominator, 4, and you add that to the numerator. Use brackets if it helps, okay? And then that sum, you put that over the original denominator, 4. And so it's going to be 3 times 4, which is 12, plus 1 is 13 over 4. Okay, so now you have 2 improper fractions. What do you do with those improper fractions? Now you can multiply them. 14 over 5 times 13 over 4. When you multiply the numerators, 14 times 13, you get 182. Multiply the denominators, 5 times 4, you get 20. And so there's your answer. Is there a common factor between these two? Well, it turns out if I divide the top and bottom by 2, so if I take the fraction 182 over 20, divide the top and bottom by 2, we get 91 on the top and 10 on the bottom. 91 over 10 is a fraction in a reduced form. Okay. That's it. You try these questions here down below. Pause the video and I'll give you the result. Hopefully you had a chance to do it now. So here we have the first one, 182 over 15. And for the second one, you should get 442 over 35. Okay, so that's it for our first part of this unit, multiplying and dividing fractions and mixed numbers. Have a try at the exercises and see you in the next lesson.